What if I told you that a medical diagnosis everyone considered a one-way street actually has a U-turn? For decades, type 2 diabetes was just seen as a condition you managed, something that only got worse. But what if that entire belief was just plain wrong? This one sentence, this idea, has defined the experience of millions of people. It's been the dogma written into medical textbooks and treatment plans for generations. But today, we're going to dig into how modern science is telling a totally different and much more hopeful story. Okay, so to really get where we're going, we first have to understand where we've been. Why did this idea of an inevitable march stick around for so long? Well, it wasn't just some wild guess. It was based on the best evidence that doctors had to work with at the time. I mean, think about it like this. If you only ever read the last chapter of a book, you just assume that's the only way it could possibly end, right? Well, that's kind of what was happening here. The diagnostic tools we had could only catch the disease way late in the game, after the body's little insulin factories, the beta cells, were almost completely exhausted. So of course, it looked like a one-way path downhill. All right, so let's get into the nitty-gritty. As scientists started digging deeper, they realized, whoa, this is way more complicated than just the pancreas giving out. They found this whole web of problems, a whole host of interconnected failures that they gave this really dramatic name, the ominous octet. And this model, it was a total breakthrough. It showed that type 2 diabetes isn't just a pancreas problem. Nope, it's a full-body system failure. We're talking about 8 different parts of your body that start to go haywire, all working together to crank up blood sugar. Let's break a few of them down. So first up, let's talk about the body's biggest energy users, your muscles and your liver. In T2D, think of your muscles as having doors that let sugar in for energy. But now, those doors get really sticky and slowed open, so all that sugar gets left hanging out in the bloodstream. At the exact same time, your liver, which is only supposed to release sugar when you're fasting, gets its signals totally crossed and starts dumping sugar into your system 24/7. Next up, the pancreas. It's the insulin factory, right? It's working overtime, trying to pump out enough insulin to handle all that sugar, until it just gets exhausted and can't keep up. Meanwhile, your fat cells, they stop listening to insulin's signal to store fat properly. Instead, they start leaking excess fats into your blood, which basically gums up the works in your muscles and liver, making their insulin resistance even worse. It's a real vicious cycle. And get this, the problem goes all the way up to your command center, your brain, and even your gut. Key hormones that are supposed to send the, hey, you're full signal, they just kind of stop working right. So your body is already struggling to handle all the energy it has, but your brain is still screaming, we need more food. It's a total mismatch. And just to pile on, 2 more systems go haywire. There are these other cells in the pancreas, the alpha cells, that start overproducing a hormone called glucagon, which basically tells the liver to release even more sugar. And then your kidneys, which are supposed to act like a safety valve and filter out excess sugar, they do the exact opposite. They start pulling sugar back into the body, actively keeping blood sugar high. So, okay, when you hear about 8 different systems all failing at once, that whole idea of an inexorable march starts to make a lot of sense, doesn't it? But what if the most fundamental part of that idea, the assumption that all this damage was permanent, what if that was the part we got wrong all along? And asking that one simple question, is it really inevitable? Well, that kicked off a revolution. It forced scientists and doctors to go back and re-examine literally everything they thought they knew about how this disease works. And this table just lays it out so clearly. On one side, you have the old way of thinking. 2D is an irreversible disease that only gets worse. But on the other side, you see the new science. Those insulin-making beta cells, turns out they're surprisingly tough. They have this built-in resilience, and we can actually coax them back into service. And just like that, the entire story changes. Yeah, so this is the real turning point. This completely new understanding of beta cells. The very same cells we thought were these fragile little dominoes just waiting to fall over. Well, it turns out they're actually incredibly adaptable. This concept is called beta cell plasticity, and it is an absolute game changer. It means the cells aren't just passively dying off. It's more like they can go into a kind of hibernation to protect themselves from all that metabolic stress. And here's the crucial part. Under the right conditions, you can actually wake them up and get them working again. And because these cells can bounce back, we can now seriously talk about a new goal, remission. Now, let's be clear, this isn't a cure in the sense that the underlying risk is gone forever, But it does mean getting back to normal blood sugar levels without needing any medication. And that's a goal that was basically considered science fiction just a few years ago.
So this huge shift in understanding, knowing that beta cells are resilient and that remission is actually on the table, has completely torn up the old treatment playbook. We've had to write a brand new one.
Instead of just chasing one number, the A1C, the modern approach is what's called complication-centric. So the goal isn't just to lower blood sugar, it's about protecting your entire body. It means tailoring therapy and choosing medications that pull double or even triple duty, protecting your heart, your kidneys, and your whole cardiovascular system from long-term damage. And this is exactly where these newer classes of medication have been so revolutionary. We're talking about drugs like GLP-1 receptor agonists and SGLT2 inhibitors. They have these awesome extra benefits. The technical term is pleiotropic effects. So yeah, they lower blood sugar, but massive clinical trials have proven they also reduce heart attacks and strokes, protect the kidneys, and often help with weight loss. They're hitting multiple targets from that ominous octet all at once.
So you can really see how the entire objective has shifted. We've moved from a place of just resigned management of a disease that's supposed to get worse to a proactive, offensive strategy of preserving and restoring the body's own systems, with the amazing, achievable goal of putting the disease into remission.
And that leaves us with this final, really provocative thought. If a condition that was once defined by its inevitability can actually be reversed, well, it forces us to reevaluate everything. It changes how we should approach prevention, how early we need to intervene, and fundamentally, it changes how we define what it means to live with, or maybe even live without, type 2 diabetes.